Hello, it's Helen from Journal with Purpose and welcome to my latest video. Today I'm going to be doing a journal with me page in my traveller's notebook, but I wanted to start off by sharing with you some beautiful products that have been sent to me by Artistro. As you may know, I don't say yes to many collaborations on my channel. But when Artistro contacted me and I had a look at their products, I thought they were going to be just perfect for using in my journals. So to start with, inside this really lovely pouch is this tin of 48 watercolours. And I get asked lots of times about whether I can recommend affordable supplies, and that was one of the reasons I was really keen to try all of these out. So inside this tin you get 10 sheets of £140 watercolour paper. There's a swatch chart which I've already had a quick go with. You then get a pre-done chart as well with all of the colours on there. And you can see there's just a beautiful array of colours in here. You also get an eraser, you've got the water brush with a little sponge there, which is great if you're on the go, a pencil and a brush. And it's got just such a great range. So you can see from here it says that you've got 40 standard art colours, 4 fluorescent colours and 4 metallic colours. And I have used one of the pieces of watercolour paper and just had a quick play. And we've got some of the gorgeous metallics here. I'm not sure how well they'll pick up on camera, but I was really happy. Artistro were really keen for me to have a play with them and see what I thought before doing any filming using the products. And so I've done a few different pieces, but obviously I'm going to share with you how I use them in my journals today. And alongside this, they also sent me these 42 paint pens, and I asked for the ones with the extra fine tip, and you can use them on glass, ceramic, woods. I've used pens similar to this on things like stones before, but the extra fine tips I find work really well when you're doing more detailed pieces in journals. And again, a gorgeous selection of colours there. And Artistro are an American-based brand, and they also sell their products widely on Amazon. I'll leave you a link down below and a 10% off coupon code in case you're interested in checking out either these products or any of the other ones that they sell. So I'm now just going to get everything set up quickly so I can get started on my journal pages. The first thing I'm going to do is mix up some colours in my palette, because I know that I want to be able to blend some of these colours together. And the first colour that I'm going for here is raw ochre. I'm absolutely loving the changing colours of the leaves at the moment, and autumn is one of my absolute favourite seasons, so it seemed just right to do a journal page that was kind of centred around that theme. I'm also going to go for a little of the burnt umber. And I'm going to create a wash on one of my pages and then do something more detailed on my right hand page. But that's why I wanted to make sure that I had my colours mixed up in advance with lots of water. And this journal that I'm working in, I think I've only completed one page in it so far, and I always get a bit more anxious, I think, with the pages at the beginning. So I want to go with something to ease myself in. I'm going to start off with my wash on the left hand side, just to kind of get me feeling that I've started the page and everything's going okay. And the final colour that I'm going to mix is olive green. As I mentioned, I've done a few different practices using these paints and the pens and got on really well with them. I love trying out new art supplies, and particularly ones that are perhaps more affordable, because I think that you don't want to be kind of too worried and precious about your supplies. And I think when they're affordable, as long as you're really happy with the results, I think it's just such a great way to get going. And with something like this, with so many colours, I know I'm going to be able to use it in all sorts of different projects. I think I want to lighten up this first colour just a bit, the raw ochre. So I'm going to use a tiny bit of the light yellow as well from my palette, just to lift the colour a little bit. Okay, so now I've got those mixed, I'm going to move everything over. I may well have to mix some more as well, but I'm keen to get started. And I want this to be a big quote page, but so I want to put down my wash first of all. So I'm not doing anything difficult here at all. I'm using quite a big brush for this just because I want to be able to make sure that I can get lots of colour down quite quickly. I'm now going to go for my darker brown, and I'm just going to leave a little gap in between for now. And I'm then cleaning my brush off, but coming back with a wet brush so that I can blend these together. And that just helps to soften the line a little bit. Now the journal I'm using has Tomo River paper in it, so it is really thin and it's going to wrinkle, but I know from experience it holds up to watercolour really nicely, and I love wrinkles in my pages. And I also know, because I keep my journal in a cover, that actually over time it's going to flatten out some of those wrinkles a little as well. And I'm now going to just add my final strip of colour along the bottom, and I thought this would be really nice to reflect those changes in the leaves from the greens to the browns, and instantly think of autumn when I look at these pages. And again, I'm just using then a wet brush in between to help blend those two colours together and soften out the line. And then add my final green along the bottom. One thing I like about Tomo River paper and watercolour is that the results are actually quite unpredictable, because you can see where it wrinkles, you get those little pools of colour which you wouldn't obviously get with watercolour paper. But it's one of the things that I love the most. I think all of these little puddles of water add such an interesting effect to your journal pages. And it's something that just happens without you having to try at all. Okay, so now that that is all done, I'm so happy with how that's looking, and I feel it's eased me into it. I'm going to dry off that page quickly and then mix some more of those same colours to use on the opposite page. Now that that's dried, I'm going to move on to this page, and I've mixed up those same colours, but I've used less water this time. And I want to start off by adding some leaves to the top of my page. And I'm using the brush that came with the Artistro set this time, because it's nice and small and going to be perfect for more detailed pieces. So I'm just holding the brush lightly and then pressing down for those leaf shapes. I find that I paint so many leaves at this time of year. I think it's just such a lovely way to bring an instant kind of hint of autumn to your journal pages. I'm going to add another one coming across the top here. Adding watercolour to my journals is one of my favourite things to do, and I used to be really nervous of watercolour, but it's turned into one of my favourite supplies. It's something I use all the time. I find it's quite forgiving, possibly more so than kind of sketching and things like that, because you can just always keep playing with the shapes of what you've created and kind of stretching the paint out a little bit further. So that's my leaves done at the top, and then I fancied adding some mushrooms to the bottom of my page. So I'm going to use this same brown again for starting. Just going to do a really simple kind of dome shaped for my first one. And bring that around. Mushrooms is another one of my kind of favourite autumn kinds of things. We do get to see some of them when we walk our dog Barney, but not as many as I'd like, so I often look up photos of mushrooms and save them on my Pinterest board, because I think there's just something so lovely about them. So I'm going to leave that to dry a moment before moving on to the stalk of it. I think I'm then going to add a darker brown, kind of more wobbly mushroom in the middle. And then I'm going to come back and add some of the details to the mushrooms using the paint pens once I've dried this all off. But painting is something I tend to do a lot of as well during the cooler months when it's not so easy to get outside, and often is something that I'll be doing at weekends, is just getting my paints out and having a bit of a play, and I find the more that I use them, kind of the more confident I become. For my last mushroom, I actually fancy having a red one, so I'm going to mix in perhaps a couple of the different reds together to get the colour I'm looking for. I rarely work directly from the palette unless I want something really deep and concentrated. I like just to be able to mix a reasonable amount of water in as well. So let's go for a nice red dome. That's it, got the shape that I'm after. And again, I'm just going to dry these off quickly so I can add the stalks to my mushrooms. For my mushrooms, I'm going to mix up a grey colour. So I'm going to start off with some white. You can see I haven't cleaned my brush that well. And I'm going to just mix a tiny bit of black in with that as well. I'd love to know if you're lucky enough to get to see lots of mushrooms on your walks. There are a few around here where I know we'll see them, so I think once I get to a nice dry sunny weekend, I think we're going to be taking Barney out for a really nice long walk and seeing what we can find. Okay, I'm happy with that as my colour now. I'm just going to add some really simple stalks coming out from the mushrooms. I love painting in journals. I think it's one of those things where I used to be really nervous about kind of watercolour. There's something about creating in a journal that takes the pressure off, because I never think things need to be perfect in your journals. I think it's a really good place to play and try out new things, and as long as it kind of reflects what you wanted it to, which for me this whole page is about the beautiful season of autumn, then it's kind of done what it needed to do. And when I look back through my journals now to my first watercolour pages from a few years ago, I can also see kind of the progression, and that makes me really happy. With this mushroom, I'm going to want to add a darker kind of rim underneath it. But while I've got my paint still out, before I dry those off, I want to add just a few little kind of green splashes onto this page to bring the green across too. So I'm just going to finish my red mushroom off with just a little bit of brown underneath it. And this brush is a really nice size actually for doing smaller, more kind of detailed sections. Bring that down a bit. Okay, I'm really happy with how that's looking, so I'm just going to make sure everything's completely dry, tidy up my paints a little bit, and then come back and start using the paint pens to add the quote and some details. So I'm now going to use some of the paint pens, and if you're new to these, one of the things I love about them is they're great for kind of layering on top of other mediums like watercolour. And I always have a scrap bit of paper to the side. When you first get them, you have to shake them quite a few times and then also press the nib in to get the paint running right through onto the nib. So I want to add a quote to this page, and I want to do kind of a faux calligraphy effect. So I'm going to start off with time. And I'll just show you with the first word how I do it. So I'm going to come across and just do some thicker downward strokes. So anywhere where the pen's moved down the page, I'm just going to thicken that up a bit. So that kind of gives you the effect that you would have with kind of a brush pen or something like that. And again, you can always kind of add little bits if you want to make letters taller. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish writing out this quote. So now I've got that quote done, I want to add some details to my mushrooms. One of the things I really like about this set is that it's got 2 blacks and 2 whites in it, which I know are colours that I'm going to use a lot. I'm going to start off with a brown. I notice I've also slightly smudged underneath that mushroom where it wasn't quite dry, so I'm hoping my white paint pen might kind of save me a little bit there too. So you can see there, if a pen hasn't yet been used, as an entirely white nib, so that means I'm going to need to shake it and get the paint running through. So I just want to add some little dots to this mushroom. It's one of the things I just love about paint pens, is being able to add these little details in. I'm going to add some little white shapes on top of here. Let me shake this pen and get it going. That's better. And that's why I always have a little bit of scrap paper, just so that I can press down the nibs if I need to just get everything back flowing again. And I love the size of the nibs on these pens. You can see where I've done the writing there. They're really lovely and fine, so you can do small details or do sort of bigger pieces as well. Some of the other paint pens I've got much thicker nibs, so I really like having this extra fine size. And I'm going to add some little dots on this mushroom, as you can see, and get really nice and detailed small dots. I might draw a line on here and see if I can disguise my little smudge. Excellent, I'm happy with that. Okay, so I'm just going to leave these a few minutes, I think, to check that they're entirely dry, so that hopefully I don't smudge anything else. The final thing I'm going to do before I add my journal writing is just add a little bit of stamping. One of the things I like to do is try and balance out my pages a little bit, and I've got some bold black writing on the left hand page, and I'm going to be writing in black ink on the right hand page anyway, but I thought it would be nice to have kind of some stamping images, which again are also quite bold. They help to break up some of the writing space a little bit as well. So I'm going to add my mushroom there and a leaf along the bottom, and that's just something I always try and bear in mind, so I try and use similar colours and things like that, so that it just really helps to kind of tie things together a little bit. And I'm going to add just one last little bit of stamping on here. So that's now it for my creative elements that I'm going to add on here. So I'm going to move ahead and add some of my journal writing. So that is my journal pages now all completed, and I feel that it's just feels so beautiful and autumnish. And I've written down about how some days I don't feel like I'm necessarily in the mood for going out for a walk, but because we've got little Barney here, we don't actually really have a choice, and just how much better I feel every single time I do. And I try and take time to notice how the light's shining through the trees, how things smell if it's been raining, and just tiny little changes which happen kind of every day, and it's just such a mood booster for me. So I really hope you're doing well. I hope you've enjoyed this video and seeing how my nature autumn pages have come together. And obviously don't forget to check out all of the details that will be listed down below for the Artistro supplies. Thank you ever so much for watching, and as always a massive thank you to everybody who's joined me over on Patreon. Thank you, and I look forward to speaking with you really soon in my next video.